today and leading us on a tour of Island End River Park. I'd also like to note that Mayor Di Maria, who could not be here, has a great interest in this project. But it's great to be joined by Senator Sal DiDomenico, Representative Judith Garcia, Gladys Vega of La Colaborativa, and John Walke of Green Roots for joining us here today. And I'd like to thank the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency for the incredible work which they do every single day. I stand here with you today at the meeting point of two communities on the front lines of the climate crisis. Chelsea and Everett are among the most environmentally overburdened areas in Massachusetts, with waterways and neighborhoods long subject to industrial pollution. We're here in an environmental sacrifice zone where industries came, they polluted, they did not think about what the impact was going to be upon the surrounding neighborhood for the long term. That's why we are here, because this was an environmental sacrifice ward in Chelsea and in Everett. And over the past 2 decades, Chelsea Creek has seen more than 100,000 gallons of oil and gas spilled into its waters, right next to some of the largest communities of color and non-English speaking communities in Greater Boston. Residents of Chelsea and Everett know all too well the battle for climate justice is twofold. We're weathering the effects of the climate crisis while defending ourselves against a presidential administration set on axing the resources that keep us healthy and keep us resilient. Americans should not have to worry about their homes and businesses being protected from storm surge. If roadways are navigable whenever there's heavy rainfall, or if the local waterways are safe after the storm, that should not be a question. Cities like Chelsea and Everett have a vision to protect their riverbanks and waterfronts, and they need federal dollars and resources to turn that vision into a reality. A vision without funding is an hallucination. There has to be funding. You have to have the resources if you're going to solve these problems. And that's what FEMA's Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program, or BRIC, had been for Chelsea and Everett, and actually countless other communities facing climate risks in Massachusetts and across the nation. BRIC is a down payment on our collective vision for a livable future for everyone, so that cities and towns across the country can reimagine their local infrastructure to be climate ready. BRIC also invests in our collective safety, strengthening our resilience before it's too late. Since 2020, FEMA has awarded Massachusetts over $126 million from the program. But now, Trump and his administration has set out to cancel $90 million from that funding, ripping the rug from underneath communities who rely on this funding and putting projects across the Commonwealth, but right here in Chelsea and Everett, at risk. The Island End River Flood Resilience Project is one of those projects. It was set for $50 million from BRIC as a locally built solution for an unavoidable local challenge, which could and most likely ultimately will turn catastrophic. Flooding here in Chelsea and in Everett is a constant and a growing risk due to rising sea levels and worsening storms as a result of climate change. Serious storm surge would be catastrophic. Island End is home to over 5,000 people, the majority of whom are low income and people of color. To rip away $50 million of federal funding for this project is an act of climate injustice. That alone is unacceptable. To add insult to injury, the Trump administration's decision to terminate BRIC has repercussions far beyond the communities themselves. For example, Chelsea and Everett are the produce hub of New England, helping to generate $7 billion in economic activity every single year. Route 16 and the MBTA commuter rails Newburyport to Rockport line pass right through this district, serving over 11,000 commuters every single day. Without intervention, flooding in this area could happen almost weekly by the year 2030, and as much as twice per day by 2050. That nightmare is not an option, not for Chelsea, not for Everett, not for Massachusetts. We have to do something about it. This project would build flood barriers and restore wetlands, a natural climate resilience solution. These interventions would prevent an estimated $3.6 billion in infrastructure damage that will otherwise occur. That is a 3,000% return on the project's cost, ultimately of $120 million. It's great economics, but more importantly, it's existential for the health, safety, and livelihoods of the people of Chelsea, of Everett, and above all else, this project would deliver long-term peace of mind to communities already overburdened by environmental injustice. It's a win, 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 and a clear example of government delivering for its people. But President Trump and Elon Musk called this program wasteful and ineffective. And I'll tell you what was really wasteful and ineffective. If this project doesn't move forward, every major storm surge in the area could lead to $30 million in lost wages, $79 million in lost sales, $570 million in regional health care costs. The thousands of homes in the flood path would suffer property damage time and time again, displacing hard-working residents. This funding is not a budget line. This funding is a lifeline for the community. It's going to result in serious damage because canceling it will directly harm our constituents and our economy. It will cost our government money in the long term as we pay and pay to clean up, to rebuild after flooding that will only become more frequent and more severe. It is penny wise and $3.6 billion of damage foolish. We can prevent the damage by putting in the infrastructure that protects the entirety of this area. But we have to invest in the prevention. It's much more preferable to cure after the fact. That will be 1,000 times more expensive. That's what we're talking about with this project. And it's easy to cut what you don't care about. And for months, the Trump administration has made clear they do not care about public safety and resilience. They do not care about the long-term dreamed vision of the communities of Chelsea and Everett to build a future safe from climate change. So it's no surprise that Trump will go to any length, including by denying hard-earned federal dollars to appease his wealthy donors who are afraid of the phrase climate change. And of course, that's the irony. Trump is cutting projects like this in order to have more money for tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires, including the CEOs of oil, gas, and coal companies who created this problem for Chelsea and for Everett in the first place. That's how wrong-headed, how cruel these cuts are that Trump is proposing right here in Chelsea and Everett. And here in Massachusetts, led by Senator Sal DiDomenico and Judith Garcia, we are going to fight to protect this funding. And in the Senate, I am going every single day to keep fighting to ensure that Trump's hateful, anti-American, anti-climate, anti-immigrant agenda will not stop us from funding, securing a healthy, livable future for absolutely everyone. That is why I am going to vote against every one of Donald Trump's nominees for every position in the federal government, because they become nothing more than an extension of his hate-filled MAGA agenda. So we can't despair. We have to keep fighting. We have to go on, and we are going to fight until we win. So let me just stop right there, and recognize Fidel Maltez, the Chelsea City Manager. Welcome, sir. Thank you for hosting us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Markey, for calling attention to this critical project and for convening us here today. I also want to thank our state and local colleagues who are here today and show up every day for our community. Our state senator, Sal DiDomenico, our state rep, Judith Garcia, our fearless leader, Gladys Vega, and John Waukee from Green Roots, who is a true partner in our community. I am a resident of Chelsea, and I have the privilege of serving as our city manager. And I am grateful that so many leaders at all levels of government agree. The island and river simply cannot wait. We need to build this project now because flooding already threatens lives and livelihoods in our city. Our fire department rescue drivers who are stranded in their vehicles and assist homeowners who have flooded basements. Our commuters cannot get to work. Our businesses are forced to close. The cost of housing insurance has gone up significantly, and it puts a strain on residents and our businesses. And our community, it suffers from flooding today, and it is only going to get worse in the future. This area is home to 5,000 residents who call it home. It is dense with businesses, with infrastructure, and with critical industry that serves our entire region. In Chelsea, we cannot afford to pack up and move, and we shouldn't have to. To secure this funding, we had to prove that this project made sense, and it did. The cost-benefit analysis of this project showed that we have $3.7 billion in benefits, more than 30 times the cost of the project. By FEMA's own standards, the island and river is a slam dunk. Chelsea has just celebrated our 400th anniversary, our 400th birthday. And in addition to a rich history and a number of firsts in our region, we are proud to be who we are. We are proud to be a city of immigrants. We are proud to be a gateway city. And we are proud to be the welcome center for Boston. Chelsea provides access to the American dream to hardworking people wanting to thrive and to provide for their families and their future. And despite all of the challenges that we are seeing today, Chelsea is hopeful of the future. Part of that future is resilience to withstand extreme weather, which is now becoming a regular occurrence. To put it bluntly, we simply cannot wait. The time to act is now, and the time is now to build this project. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Great job. Now we're going to hear from my partner up in the Massachusetts State Senate on all these environmental justice issues, Senator Sal DiDomenico. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator Markey. And before I begin, I want to thank Senator Markey because he has been talking about climate change issues, talking about environmental justice issues for decades. Decades. When people might not have thought the impacts were real, now we know they're real. Now we see what's happening. But he had the foresight, and he was a champion pushing these issues largely by himself in Congress. So we want to thank him for all the work that he's done, because if he wasn't talking about it, nobody was. Then I want to just say a few things about why we're here today and what the devastating effects these communities could have going forward. you know, if you look around us, as the senator said, heavy industry found a home in Everett and Chelsea on our waterfronts, largely closing off the waterfront for public use for decades. And he was being kind when he said that they didn't know what the impacts were. They actually did know. They actually did know that they were harming our communities, creating cancer clusters, creating brownfields, creating places that they didn't want to live in, but they contaminated, and they brought the effects of all these heavy industry into our homes and our communities in Everett and Chelsea. Just imagine if the flooding happens on our waterfront with all that contaminated soil that has been there for decades, sometimes for 100 years, where those chemicals and all the contaminants are going to be going into our neighborhoods. So it's not just about, you know, saving lives, which is very, very important, of course, livelihoods, but also contaminating all of the other areas around our communities that, thank God, have not been impacted by these contaminants, but they soon will be. So the Trump administration has taken upon themselves to have a checklist of how to hurt vulnerable populations across our country. It's almost like it has a list in the Oval Office. Check this, check that, check this, going down the line of how much we can hurt people and communities that have suffered for so long. And this is just one of those moments that we cannot allow to happen. If we do not have this grant, we don't have this funding, there will be devastation in our communities. At the state level, working with my partners, Representative Garcia, and the whole delegation from Everett, Cambridge, Somerville, Chelsea, we combined resources and our forces for many years to put together money in bond bills to make sure we had money for a federal match for these funds. We got that money, and the Hill administration has unlocked that money. So we have the funds at the state level, and we did have the funds at the federal level to make a difference and make this project go forward. And now we have an EPA administrator and people in the Trump administration who have cut the programs, and as the senator said, to give tax breaks to billionaires. That is what is happening. And for far too long, communities like Everett and Chelsea have been left behind. This was our moment. This was our moment to show we have support, and people are watching us. They see us. They hear our voices. This was the moment. And the Biden administration came to our rescue with the help of our delegation in D.C. and our climate change champion. And now we have to keep fighting. But have no fear. Chelsea and Everett are resilient communities. We don't give up easily. If we gave up, then we would not have what we have today. Because every step of the way, these communities have been put to the background, and we keep fighting. And we keep fighting to get what we get. So I am just happy that our senator is here today. And I want to thank our Congresswoman Anna Presley as well, and our entire delegation who are fighting the good fight in D.C. They're in the minority. Their voices speak louder than the minority. They know what we need in this community, and they know that if they don't fight, who will? Who will? If not them, then who will? So I am just happy to be here to lend my voice and support to the effort of not giving up and making sure that we highlight what is happening in this community, all the great things that are happening here. We are on the move. Chelsea never on the move. We cannot go backwards. We cannot go backwards. Thank you much, everyone. Have a great day.
Beautiful job. Thank you. Yeah, and Senator DiDomenico is absolutely right. We're here as well with Eric White, who is the district director for Congresswoman Presley, who is here today. Thank you. And again, on the floor of the House, she battles every day on these environmental justices. I don't know if you want to say anything on her behalf.
Congresswoman's very sorry she couldn't be here.
No, thank you. And and of course, I partner with Ayanna every day, fighting for Chelsea, fighting for all these communities to get the help which they need. And Lisa Sandegate is here from the Chelsea City Councilor. Thank you so much for joining us. And now we're going to hear from someone who has become the symbol of Chelsea, the fight for justice, environmental, economic, healthcare, justice for everyone, from La Colaborativa. Gladys Vega, please come in.
Buenos días, bienvenidos aquí a este espacio tan bonito. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to this beautiful space. Thank you for coming to my city, our city, and our neighborhood city of Everett. I am Gladys Vega. I serve as the CEO of La Colaborativa, a community-led organization that gave birth to environmental justice in the city of Chelsea. And we did it with a lot of pride, with our heart and soul, knowing that there were a lot of injustice in the waterfront. And guess what? Who lives in the waterfront? The poorest community members, whether they're from Central America, South America. We became a dumping ground, and I'm delighted to be here. It is so sad that you didn't bring a $50 million check. We were expecting that, right? We were expecting that because we need to make this happen. But instead, we are here to shine a light on the grave injustice, the cancellation of $50 million in building resilient infrastructure in our community, which is also known as the BRIC funding, that was destined to protect and uplift two communities, Everett and Chelsea. Let me be clear. This isn't just about the dollars. It is about the lives and the dignity of the working poor. It is about the immigrant families who have lived here for generations in the shadows of highways, oil tanks, and industrial pollution. But we can't do this alone. The BRIC funds are supposed to be a lifeline, right? But we're not going to give up. We're going to continue to recognize that the work needs to be done, and in that our cities deserve this type of infrastructure to protect us from climate change. This cancellation is just not a budgetary decision. It is a denial of environmental justice. Because when you deny us environmental justice, you're denying immigrant justice, you're denying racial justice, you're denying senior justice, and justice for every working family fighting to breathe, and we will not let that injustice stand. I also want to say that in a community like Chelsea, Everett, this is a community that without these type of resiliency grants, we're not able to make it, and we have to be real. Climate is the only thing that we can touch, that we can taste. That this is about the air, the quality of life for every individual, regardless where you come from. And I think that the fight must continue. We have to make sure that when we have to go to Washington D.C. and advocate for climate change and teach these individuals that have never been exposed to something like this, to environmental pollution, to oil farms seeping their oils in our waterfront, that we need to teach them where we live and what our contributions are. And I want to thank Senator Markey for standing with us and for always being a champion of communities, whether it's on environmental justice, climate change, immigration, health care quality, all the issues that we care deeply about. But I also want to make sure that every elected official, every agency, every partner that believes in equity, help us restore this bill, help us do the work, and let's unite together. And I want to also acknowledge the work that Green Roots has done when it comes to environmental justice. They've been sort of like taking the torch and continuing this movement, and it's very, very important for us to continue to fight together as a community, and for us to make sure that this money gets to, comes to Massachusetts, comes to Chelsea, comes to Everett, and that we don't suffer the issues of climate change at the severity that is intended to be. Muchísimas gracias. Dios los bendiga. Gracias.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Great job, as usual. And finally, we're going to hear from John Walke, Director of Climate and Justice and Waterfront Initiatives from Green Roots. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator, and thank you for all the elected officials, Senator DiDomenico and Rep. Garcia for being here, and for all the municipal representatives. I think from everything you've heard, you can tell that this project is something that just takes a lot of community groups. It takes government at all levels, working between municipal governments. It takes a lot of work on funding, and the state has put up a lot of funding to do the beginning of the planning for all of this. And we've gotten to a point here where as you've heard, we've been sort of stuck by the federal government and what it's doing. But to understand where we've gotten to, it's important to know where you came from. 30 years ago, Green Roots was founded as part of we were actually the Green Space and Recreation Committee of the Human Services Collaborative of Chelsea. And it was at a moment in time in Chelsea where we were concerned about losing park space. So really we started out as park advocacy, getting more park space and green space for the people in Chelsea. And as soon as we got involved in that, we realized that trees and parks and things like that don't just sit in a vacuum. They sit in a social context. And that social context was a lot of injustice that these communities, not just Chelsea, but East Boston, Everett, Revere, all these places have experienced. And so when we talked 30 years ago about environmental justice, people didn't know what that term was. For people in Chelsea, they might not have known the term, but they got it at a gut level of exactly what it meant. Because what it meant was your family's home being moved and neighborhoods being wiped out to put in a highway and a bridge that brought pollution and noise pollution and air pollution, but benefited other people. It meant having industry, which for hundreds of years had no regulation to it, just dumping chemicals in the creek, fouling the land, the water, and the air, and people just had to put up with it because this was the place you put it. And at the time, people in Chelsea may not have heard, now it's much more commonly understood, the practice of redlining and what that meant. A government policy in place to have no investment in a community on the basis of the ethnic breakdown, the low-income community, the demographics. Basically, who lived here dictated what happened here from the market, from the government. And we have spent from that way back all the way through the 30 years of Greenridge time of fighting back against these things on the social level, on the level of immigration, on the level of environment, of trying to get a better deal for the people who live here. Let me just check the notes here. So one of the big things that we got into right away was getting community access to the waterfront. If 30 years ago you would ask people, I'm here in Chelsea, bring me to the waterfront, you would say, give me some bolt cutters, I can take you down there because it's fenced off. We can't get to it. It's either behind a fence and there's an industrial use, or it's a vacant lot that's a brownfield and contaminated. We are surrounded on three sides by water and we couldn't get to it. But we'd look at Cambridge, we'd look at Boston, we'd look at the Mystic Lakes further up in the watershed, and people had access to the water. Their waterfront was an asset. Our waterfront was a liability, and we fought to change that. 20 years ago was finally the first actual public park on the Chelsea Creek on the East Boston side. About another 10 years later or so, we actually worked with industry that we had been fighting for years, to see a public access point on the Chelsea side. Just last week we got one of those, take away the silver shovel. We had a groundbreaking on a public access point next to the Chelsea Street Bridge. And just yesterday we had a fantastic ribbon cutting on a park on Mill Creek, with just dozens, like about 100 people there, families all there to have actual access down to the waterfront, which has never been available to them in the past. Now, it's ironic that we finally get the community to come down to the sea at the moment that the sea is actually coming in to meet the community. And we actually want the former, not the latter. We're trying to prevent the sea from coming in to our communities. And this project was one of those things that would protect the produce center, which you can see just behind us, that serves not only this region, just like all those other industries. It's something that we bear the burden here in Chelsea and Everett of the truck traffic, the wear on the roads, the air pollution, and the region gets the benefit of having all that produce being distributed out beyond New England and beyond. And we do get the jobs and the economic development of that. We want to protect that. We don't want to be fixing it after it floods. So a project like this is important. So for over these years, where we've come from is we have fought back not only as a community, but as a state and as a nation against injustices in our laws, injustices in our society, and the injustices that have been taken to the land and to the air. And all of that is being rolled back now. So it's not about just the $50 million for our little project. This is about rolling back everything, all the progress we have made. Well, as we just said, where we came from, maybe make America great again. Maybe in the past things weren't that great because we had redlining, because we had pollution that was just going out and unregulated. We want to make America great again, but we have been doing that. And we've been doing that in Chelsea every day. And so that's what we are looking for, the partnership again. We have it here. We need it in the White House to develop and finish this project here for the benefit, not only for Chelsea, but for the whole region. So thank you.
Thank you, John, so much. Thank you, John. Okay, good, please.
So this is what happens when I don't have notes. I also, at all levels of government, we had partners, and I didn't want to leave today without recognizing two people in particular that are here with us today. that were our partners with writing the bond bills, and they were writing the grants to get the federal funds. We have Emily from Chelsea, who has been leading with us. Emily. And then we also have Pat Johnson from the Everett side, who was working on this as well. So without having partners on the ground in our communities, we cannot do the work that we do. So thank you to the two of you.
Yep, thank you both. Yeah, and thank you both for your great work. And we can see the vision, but again, a vision without funding is an hallucination. We need to find the funding. So why do I care about this? Well, I grew up in Malden, 3 blocks from the Malden River. And my mother told me when I was 10 years old, whatever you do, Eddie, don't swim in the Malden River. Because the chemical companies, the coal companies, the rubber companies had all used the Malden River as a dumping ground, as a sewer. And the Malden River was black with a pre-Jimi Hendrix purple haze over it when I was growing up. So when your mother tells you not to swim in the Malden River, she is basically telling you you're not growing up on the Mississippi like Tom Sawyer. You're in Malden. You're in Ward 2 in Malden, which was the environmental sacrifice ward. Now, I still live 3 blocks from the Malden River. And we've worked hard to clean up the Malden River. The Tufts Boathouse is now on the Malden River. It still needs more work to make sure that it is pristine clean. Chelsea and Everett suffered from the very same industrial legacy of using the water of these communities as a sewer, as a dumping ground, and then walking away. That's what we're talking about here today. We're talking about true environmental justice to give these communities what they deserve. The industries took this land. They walled out the citizens of the communities, and then they polluted those waters. Now we have an opportunity to ensure that there is true environmental justice, cleaning up the water, but also making sure that the oil and the gas and the coal industry does not, through their pollution in the atmosphere, lead to flooding that is devastating to the residents of Chelsea and Everett. That's why we're here, in order to rectify all of those historic injustices, which, by the way, continue until today. Donald Trump is seeking to allow for a pollution get-out-of-jail-free card issued to the coal, gas, and oil industry so that they can further endanger these communities. And again, to use all that funding for tax breaks for the billionaires and the millionaires. That's why we're here. That's what this fight is all about. We thank all of you for coming, and if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer about anything. Thank you all so much. Thanks for being here.